Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Inspira Advantage webinar on preparing for the CASPer test. My name is Hallie Caldwell, and I'm a member of the Inspira Advantage team. Inspira Advantage is an academic consultation group committed to helping aspiring students get into the country's top medical schools. We have two fantastic consultants here with us today who work with students like you on things like preparing for the CASPer test, building your med school lists, setting in applications, working on secondaries, personal statements, really all parts of the application. And they're amazing at what they do. And we'll introduce them in just a moment. So today we'll introduce our panelists. We'll talk about the purpose and significance of the CASPer test. We'll talk about the format of the test, what med schools look for when evaluating your scores. We'll talk about strategies to navigate CASPer. We'll go over some last minute tips and tricks, and then we'll open things up for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. Additionally, we are recording this, and we'll send this out via email in the next few days. You can look back on the information that you learned. So we have Nicole and Aditya here today. Nicole, can you give us an introduction, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Nicole. I am a fourth-year medical student at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and I recently just matched into neurosurgery, and I'll be moving up to Mayo Clinic in Rochester.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and congratulations on that match and your upcoming graduation. Aditya, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Aditya. I am a current second-year radiology resident at Mayo Clinic Rochester, and I also went to medical school at Mayo Clinic Arizona.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll dive right in and talk about what is the purpose and significance of the CASPer. Aditya, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, so the CASPer is it's a fairly new addition to the medical school process. When I applied around like 2012, 2013, this didn't exist. But for those that don't know what this is, I'd call this kind of pretty similar to the multiple mini interview format that you have in person. The only difference is this is before the interviews. This is almost like part of the secondary portion of the applications that medical schools have you fill out. It's essentially testing the same things as what an MMI requires of you. It's designed to evaluate personal characteristics and see how you handle yourself in certain hypothetical situations. So they're testing for things like empathy, professionalism, ethics. But instead of interviewing with someone face-to-face like an MMI, you're doing this online, and it's more standardized. And that way kind of gives them more of a humanistic label to your application and what you can bring to the table.
Fantastic. Nicole, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so. I think that was a very nice comprehensive overview of what this is.
Great. So let's talk a little bit more about the purpose of the CASPer test.
Yeah, so the purpose of this, like Aditya was saying, is really to add another element to your application that medical schools can then use when evaluating you. And this is on top of things like your GPA and your aspect to that's more on those softer skills like the empathy, the decision making, and really showing your communication skills to schools. And this, when I applied, this was around, but not for a ton of schools, though I think it's increasing now with how many schools are emphasis on taking the CASPer exam and using that as part of their assessment of your application. And it's starting to become just more of an emphasis on medical schools selecting people who have those skills that are important in medicine, like the empathy and decision making, and those really strong personal characteristics when they evaluate who might be a good fit for them in their program.
Aditya, anything else to add here?
Yeah, basically reiterating the same thing. So it's again just emphasizing those humanistic qualities because they're just becoming increasingly more important in medicine. You know, topics like compassion fatigue and a lot of these more humanities topics are discussed a lot more widely within medicine with medical communities. And so this is a way to kind of filter people that already have those shining qualities so that hopefully we can overcome that issue in the entire community.
Great. All right, let's talk about the format. We'll go into technical requirements, sections, timing, and scoring here.
Yeah, again, so this test is more standardized. So it's administered by a third-party organization, and so you'll take it through their website, the Take CASPer website. Um, I think these things are pretty like ubiquitous now for everyone, kind of given that we're in like the Zoom era now. But just to reiterate again, you're going to need a computer with internet. You're going to need a webcam because sometimes you're going to have to do video responses instead of written responses, and of course you're going to need a microphone as well. So pretty much if you already have a adequate Zoom setup, you should be good to go for this portion of the exam. But this is just becoming a lot more prevalent within the medical school application.
Yeah, probably very similar to what you guys have experienced during your undergraduate careers with taking exams that are proctored. It's very similar.
All right, so test format and sections.
So the CASPer test itself is divided into 14 different sections. The first section of it is going to be 6 scenarios that are video-based responses. So you get a chance to either read over a scenario or they'll have a short video for you to watch. And then they'll present you in that video-based response section with 2 questions that are open-ended. And then you have a minute to respond to questions that are recorded. And then the last 8 sections after that are typed-based responses. So again, either you'll read a scenario or a scenario will be presented to you through video. And then you'll have 3 open-ended sections that you then type responses to. And for those sections, you'll have 5 minutes to respond to those questions. And again, these scenarios are very wide-ranging in terms of what they are putting you into or what they're looking for. It's very rare that you'll get anything really that's related to medicine or science. You might, but it's really more focused on your ability to think through the scenarios, what important points there are that are being introduced in each scenario, and then how your thought process then goes into a problem-solving mode of how you would respond to whatever question they're asking you, and then what ethical decision-making skills that you're using to base your responses off of.
Great. Aditya, anything else here?
Yeah, again, like the modalities that they use are pretty varied. So sometimes you'll need to write responses, sometimes you'll need to speak into the camera. And again, it's kind of their way of keeping you on your toes. If you're good at typing, that doesn't mean you're gonna be able to just kind of get, score well on this exam. You're also going to be able to, you also need to be able to be approachable in person as well. And so that's why they include that video component. So for timing and scoring of the CASPer test takes approximately 90 minutes, something you're going to have to do in one session just because the entire thing is timed. Each scenario takes about 5 minutes. So 90 minutes does seem like a long time. In the context of everything else that we have to do for medical school, it's probably one of the shortest things you have to do, but it'll fly by very quickly just because every scenario is 5 minutes. You're on your feet. You're thinking about something different every couple minutes or so. The one unique thing about CASPer is that it doesn't really give present you in one of your standardized responses compared to everyone else that kind of took it. So you're basically scored on a curve, and they kind of tell you which quartile you're in. If you're in the top quartile, that means that you were in the top 25% of responses. Now that could be good and bad. Good in the sense that you don't have to absolutely crush this thing, right? You don't have to get a 99th, 100 percentile because that doesn't exist. But that it could also be bad in the sense that if you don't hit that top quartile, there could be some questions raised as to why was that not the case. So it's one of those things where it is kind of easy to do but difficult to master. It's still important to prepare for this test to try and get as good of a score as possible. With so many different parts of the medical school application, you don't want someone to look at one part only and kind of raise some doubts about your application. So try to patch up as many holes as you can. This is an easy way to kind of get some points, kind of get a bit of a safe bet on your side so that you can focus on other parts of your application.
All right. Nicole, anything to add here before we move on?
I think the only thing to add is that the people who are going to be scoring your responses, both the video responses and the typed responses, have specific things they're looking for and how to evaluate your responses for the concepts they're trying to score. And they've also been told to ignore things like spelling, grammar, syntax. Obviously, if it's super off key and they can't understand what you're trying to say, that's not great, but they're really looking more for your thought process. So why you chose a specific route or why you chose a specific answer and what you considered in giving that answer versus what your actual decision was.
Thank you. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about what med schools look for when evaluating your performance. Nicole, you want to take this one?
Sure, yeah, sorry. So for the CASPer exam, they're, again, like we've emphasized, they're using this to add to another layer of your application and really do a similar thing as to what the MMIs are looking for, those abilities to be personable, to be empathetic, and to be that compassionate physician that is becoming a much bigger talked about concept in medicine. And this is a good way to evaluate those characteristics in a way that's standardized and that's not obviously measured by your things like your GPA or your MCAT and other objective measures like that. So really med schools are just using this as another component in your application. And like Aditya was saying, when you want to do well on this exam because you don't want it to detract from your application. So making sure that you are taking this into consideration and really trying your best on it as well, even though it is such a small exam, or it can seem like that because of how short it is, because it's a part of your application, and med school specifically will have people take this exam if they want to look at the results. So just taking it very seriously as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, it's one of those things that can be easy to miss. It seems like it's pretty small, and you can ask around. For some people, it may very well be. But if you have a bad score on something that's small, that can suddenly become a big deal, and that can be a problem for you down the road.
All right, so what does the test evaluate specifically?
So we've said this multiple times before throughout the presentation. And again, just because like we're trying to emphasize, like this is what they're looking for. Even Nicole said like they don't even care that much about minor spelling mistakes, grammar, syntax, because the thing that they are trying to look for in this exam are these qualities here, qualities such as collaboration and equity. We have this whole list of essentially human qualities. These are the qualities that anyone would want to see in their ideal physician, right? So that's essentially what they're screening for in a way. This is not picking people out that, okay, you're the one that has the best empathy, I'm going to pick you. It's more of a base screening, right? We want all our physicians to have some of these components and qualities, and this is one way to do it. And questions, there are no right answers, just as there isn't one for like multiple mini interview formats. It's more about going through your thought process, because the best way for you to show these qualities is to show them the way that you're thinking. And if you're showing the way that you're thinking coherently, they're going to be able to pick up these qualities. Like if I can give an example of a hypothetical scenario that they may give. This is not from CASPer. It's just something I'm coming up off the top of my head. You're a physician, you are, you have an outpatient practice, you have a very busy patient schedule. One of your patient no-shows, right? You're moving on with your day. You're seeing all your other patients. That patient comes to the office 2 hours later and says, I'm sorry, I forgot my appointment. Can I please get in? Can I please see you still? I think I really need to be seen today. You still have a full schedule. You don't have any room in the rest of your day. What do you do? And there's no right answer. because what are you going to do? Are you just going to put them in and you're going to displace someone else who was there on time? Are you going to extend your day? Are you going to, try to have a workaround? There are many ways to approach the situation, right? So instead of trying to get the right answer, tell them what you're thinking. You can see where they're coming from. You can see where the other patients are coming from. You can acknowledge what are the obstacles and difficulties that you have to face in this situation, and how do you systematically get through all of them. And from there, they'll piece out all these different qualities. And, if you explain it coherently enough, you'll hopefully get into the top quartile of the people taking the exam at the time.
Yeah, I think an important point was raised there is being able to consider the pros and cons and also be able to look at a situation from different perspectives. I think that shows a really great ability to make rational decisions and to be able to make ethical decisions as well.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how to prepare for the CASPer.
So preparing for any exam, very similar workflow, making sure that you first understand the format and structure of the exam, what it looks like on the web-based platform, what your scenarios and how the setup is going to look like as you flow through the exam. Time management, of course, knowing how much time that you have for the entire exam and then how much time you have for each section, and then developing a strategy that works for you that you can use consistently throughout the exam to really be as efficient as possible. In terms of the test format and structure, there's a lot of different resources that you can use. The CASPer website itself is a really great resource. It has a frequently asked questions section that will give you a nice overview of what the format exactly looks like. They even have a couple of practice scenarios down at the bottom of that page that you can look through, as well as practice questions. And they have a full-length CASPer exam that you can use as practice as well. And you can go through as many times as you'd like and really just practice on how to answer those questions and how to move through scenarios to work through, and quite a bit of questions to work through as well, is not a lot of time. So becoming really efficient in your time management skills during this exam is paramount, and making sure that you're keeping an eye on the exam itself, but then also on how much time you have. So practicing with a timer, whether that be on your phone or on your computer as you're doing practice exams, is going to be really important. In terms of your strategy, this is definitely different for everybody, but strategy in both, how do you read the scenario if it's a reading scenario, or if it's a video scenario, how do you approach that type of scenario? How are you going to take away the key aspects of the scenario? And then what are you going to do to develop your response? So just really coming up with a consistent strategy and doing each of those things is not only going to allow you to have a very nice, concise, clear answer, but also allow you to be more efficient as well in your time management.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I have nothing to add for this slide. So again, the one thing I just want to emphasize again, we've said it a lot of times, they're testing for certain qualities, and the best way to prepare for this is to practice in the way that Nicole had suggested, going through practice questions, reading scenarios, going through the actual full-length practice test, like for anything that you do, for any sort of standardized test, any sort of practice, taking that sort of test is probably going to be one of the best things that you can do. But other things that you can do as well is kind of keep this like repository of responses, stories, and kind of explanations in your head. You don't know what they're going to throw at you. The point is not to memorize a canned response and just throw it out. But the thing to do is reflect on all those stories and all those experiences that you've had, and try to really think about how you acted appropriately, empathetically, ethically, professionally in those situations. And you can take those sorts of decision points that you felt were good and showed that you were adequately exhibiting those qualities, and you can take that and transplant that into the situation that you have in that exam. One thing with the CASPer exam is, yes, this is for medical school applications. The situations that they're going to give you may not necessarily be medically related. It may be things like, oh, you are the manager at a retail store. and something happens between employees, what do you do? Or you're in a group study in college, right? It could be any scenario, right? They're just essentially asking, you're a human interacting with other humans. These are the qualities we want in you as a human that happen to also be good qualities that doctors want. But how are you going to show me that you have these qualities in any situation that I give you? So that's why it's very important to practice, see what they're going to maybe throw at you. Go online. There are a lot of blogs that Inspira Advantage actually has a lot of articles about this as well. They have some practice scenarios on their website as well. Going through those and trying to understand what they might throw at you would be very helpful as well. And then it's always about reviewing your responses during practice as well. You can type as much as you want, you can speak as much as you want, but also trying to understand, comparing it to their sample answers, to their sample responses. But also show what the test wants you to show for qualities, right? So if you can kind of tailor your responses in a way that simulates theirs, that would also be very advantageous.
The only thing I'll add as well is reviewing your responses or talking through them with a friend, a family member, a mentor, an advisor, somebody who's taken the CASPer exam, really anybody, and just workshopping your answers as well. I think for me, when I was taking the CASPer exam, it was really helpful to just talk through what I was thinking. And then in that way, I was able to be a little bit more concise and clear as to what my decision-making ideas were. All right, on test day. So like any standardized exam, it's really learning how to take a test is almost as big of a barrier as what the test is actually testing. But I think with the MCAT and with exams that you've had previously, you have some practice with this, but just some refreshers. So making sure that you're staying focused on what the exam is doing, but keeping an eyeball on that timer as you're going through. The worst thing that can happen is that you're crafting a really great response for one of the questions, but in doing so, you've used up all of your time and now you have no more time left to respond to the other two questions. So just making sure that you're allotting an equal amount of time for each response. If you get stuck on something, you can come back to it. It's not worth, not doing as well on the other responses because you've been stuck on one of the questions. So work through as much as you can. If you get stuck, move on and then come back if you have time. Also pay attention to details that they're giving you in the videos or in the written scenarios, and really trying to get as much of the different perspectives that you can out of what the limited information that they'll give you. In terms of what your responses should look like, why it's important to have a consistent strategy in approaching them is to make sure that you're as clear and concise in your answer as possible. Obviously, the raters are going to try to ignore as many spelling and syntax and grammar errors as possible. But if your response is overly verbose, or it's really just hard to understand what you're trying to say or what you're trying to talk about, it's very difficult for them to give you points and score that to your advantage. So trying to be as clear as possible with as much information as you can give, but not so much that it completely overwhelms somebody as they're reading it. And then again, as much as you can, try to be very careful with your grammar and your spelling, as well as your tone. Try to maintain a respectful and professional tone, especially when you're doing those video-based responses, when you're talking, being personable, but also professional, and just really trying to show the best of yourself.
Yeah, I want to just hit on the point about managing your time, especially for like video responses. 5 minutes goes really, really quickly in a video response, especially because we're probably in the mindset of, oh gosh, 5 minutes of video, I'm gonna have to talk a lot more to fill in the time. And then all of a sudden 5 minutes has been up and you haven't even tied your response together. So again, it's important to practice, especially the video responses. What does 5 minutes feel like? How many sentences, how many thoughts can I really get in coherently in 5 minutes, and just kind of stick to that.
All right. So let's dive into some tips. So some of these are just overview of what we already talked about, but kind of the most important things to think about.
So on test day, two things that will definitely kind of help you through is practicing active reading and then building communication skills. So first, for practicing active reading, we're not telling you to practice active reading because you're going to be answering a bunch of multiple choice questions later on. We're not expecting you to tell us what the thesis is or anything like that. The reason that we're saying for you to do practice, to practice active reading, is you need to be able to quickly, within like the first couple seconds of reading the prompt, dissect what it is that they're asking you. What are the key parts of the situation that you are going to talk about? Like, for example, if I bring back um, that scenario where you're the physician, the patient comes in late, right? There's so many things that you need to keep track of, right? You have a busy schedule, you have other patients that are waiting on you. The patient came in late, but they seem like they need it urgently. There's like all these like factors that you have to quickly synthesize, and then you have to kind of respond. Okay, you have to respond to kind of each one of those points, right? To demonstrate all the different qualities that, yes, I know the patient came in late. It seems like they want the appointment to be urgently done today. However, I do need to respect other patients' time as well. So how can I make both parties happy and kind of still keep the day within a meaningful range? So that is something that you're going to have to just kind of practice, and this is something that'll help with interviews down the road with MMIs as well, because they're just going to read a prompt to you right there, and you have 30 seconds before you walk into the room, and you have to do the same thing. And then building communication skills. My best advice for this is just have a template for what you're going to say and stick going on. Section 2 can be, okay, these are the things I need to think about. This is what the patient's concerns are. This is what the concerns are for the other people that are affected by this situation. Section 3 is kind of showing your empathy. Okay, I understand where she's coming from. I understand where they're coming from. I can understand where sometimes the interest may be conflicting. And then section 4 would be, what's your ultimate decision? You just took three sections to synthesize. And from that synthesis, show what type of person you are, what qualities you have, and then you have to tie it up with finally making a decision. But that part's not as important as showing your actual thought process.
So just a couple of more key takeaways as well, emphasizing those problem solving skills, very similar to what was just mentioned, really just showing your thought process through these scenarios and understanding the key stakeholders that are in each scenario, and then how you would go about considering each one of those. So even understanding the potential range of solutions that could be sought after from the question that they're asking you to solve, and understanding that there really is no right answer, I think is a great place to start with these questions. So knowing that there are multiple ways that somebody could go about this, and it would be, ethical and in different ways. Having that nuanced perspective is really, I think, the crux of the CASPer exam. And then again, just practice like you would practice for any other exam. I think sometimes when we think about these types of exams that are asking for, ethical decision-making skills and things like that, it's easy to go, oh, I already have that, or that's intuitive, I'm not going to practice for it. But I think there have been multiple studies that have shown practicing for the CASPer exam allows people to perform better on it. And it's not necessarily just because you're really honing in on those qualities that you have, those personal characteristics that you have, but allowing you to be clear in the way that you show those characteristics. And I think too, there's a huge skill in how you work through these problems and how you think about these problems. So just practice regularly, a couple of weeks, a couple of months leading up to your exam, go through those questions, go through the resources that are available to you. And there are so many that are available. And then work through them and workshop them with yourself, introspect on your own answers, reflect on your own answers, and then ask others for their opinions as well.
Just one other thing I'll add again, like you have like 5 minutes per section. You want all 5 minutes to be valuable content that they can use to grade you. You don't want part of the 5 minutes to be, okay, like, is this response long enough? I don't really know. This is my first time dealing with a question like this. How am I supposed to respond to the video? These things should be ironed out. That's why you're doing the practice test, so that you go in and all the time is spent towards answering the questions.
All right, great tips. Thank you both. So now we'll open things up for Q&A. If you have any questions for Nicole or Aditya, now's the time to ask. And in the meantime, do either of you two have any additional tips that we didn't necessarily cover here today, or anything that you just want to highlight again as being, really important to be thinking about?
I think one thing to add is we've been saying that this is very similar to MMIs. It's also very similar in when you're doing your interviews. So doing this exam and practicing for this exam is beneficial, not only for this exam, but going forward, you'll be very well prepared for potential scenarios and ways to think about MMIs, and then even just ways to think about how to approach your interviews. Really building your ability to be professional in your responses and respectful in your responses, I think will serve very well throughout the application process.
Fantastic. So one question is, does Inspira provide any practice prompts and scenarios? So I think that Aditya or Nicole, you might know kind of what you might work on with your consultees when working through CASPer, but I also think that we do have a solid downloadable that you can get on our website, and we'll add a link into the follow-up email of this webinar with that information. But do either of you have any specific tools that you use?
I don't like I'm trying to see if Inspira has one right now. I'm just not able to find it off the top of my head, but my advice is always like start from the source for every standardized test, because the third party organizations are going to have their own spin on it. But if if you're going to do practice questions, make sure to go to CASPer itself and start from there. And then there's always like other resources like online. Some will give like 1 or 2 questions. No one's going to give a full practice test, but someone will be like, oh, this is a type of CASPer question that you might come across, and hopefully you go to multiple sources and they're all different, and then you can kind of have a repository that way.
Fantastic. So another question is the 5 minutes per response including watching the video and or reading the prompt, or is the 5 minutes just for your answer?
The 5 minutes is solely for your typed responses. So as you take your practice exams, you'll see kind of how the flow works through them, but you'll get time to read the scenario itself, or if it's a video scenario where they give you a role and then you're inputted into a video where you have other people talking about the scenario as well, that's its own timepiece. And then they'll present you with the open-ended questions, and at that point in time, you have 5 minutes to respond with typed responses.
All right. See, we'll give it another minute if anyone else has any other questions. But in the meantime, Nicole and Aditya, I want to thank you both so much for being here tonight and going through this with us. I know I learned a little bit. I'm sure everyone viewing did as well. And we will be sending a recording of this webinar out so you can look back at what we've talked about. See, during the typed responses, can you reference the passage?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like yeah, I think you'll have to like refer to the situation. Are you meaning like do you want to put like exact quotations or things like that? No, but like I think they do expect you to reference the passage. So you say, as like in the situation that I just read, this is what I would do given this circumstance, and something you probably read in the passage, this is how I would respond. So yeah, I think referencing the passage is a fair game.
And do you have that available while you are answering the question? Or is it you read it and then have to?
No, I think so you will have that available to you during the situation. Yeah, it's not like the MMI where like that's like the one difference. Like you'll have it, but then you need to respond, because you're gonna have a series of questions. It's not just one. Right? You'll have like one question. Okay, this is your typed response, and you move to the next one and then go from there.
All right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It was great to have you all here. And yeah, feel free to reach out to Inspira Advantage if you want to set up a consultation to learn more. We have a lot of amazing free resources on our website that you can look through. And we also have webinars that you can go back and watch as well. And this one will be sent to you. Nicole, Aditya, thanks so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you both here.
All right. Thanks so much.
Our pleasure.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.